Okay, Cadell, could you start the meeting now, please?
Yep. Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny meeting. I'd like to, first of all, thank everyone for being here today. And we'll start the meeting by agenda item 1, to receive apologies for absence.
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Connor, Councillor Humphrey, Councillor Purser, Councillor Spalding and Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, the previous minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of January 2023. The panel have those minutes in front of them. If there are any comments or alterations, otherwise I will sign those minutes as a true and correct record of what took place in that particular meeting. Are there any comments, please? Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, to report additional items for consideration, which the chairman deems urgent by virtue of the special circumstance we know specified, and I have none. Item 4 on the agenda, members to declare any interest in the local code of conduct in respect of any item to be discussed at this meeting. Are there any, please?
No.
Item 5 on the agenda, an update on previous actions. The panel have in front of them those actions on pages 3 to 6. If there are any comments, I will receive them. Councillor Booth, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the action where we had Clarion before us and the response we got from the planning department about the development on Gore Road, March. The two, I guess, sets of discussions don't marry up, because that update is telling us there wasn't a pre-application discussion. It was with the applicant, where Clarion were quite clear there had been pre-application discussions. So someone's not giving us the full information or being candid, I think, in this instance.
Actually, it's actually marked up as complete, but what you're saying is it's incomplete, and we need to make further investigation. Yeah. Okay, we'll take
Certainly,
that.
Chair, because Clarion were quite insistent that they had pre-application discussions, and the update from planning is saying that they didn't. They only spoke to the applicant.
Right.
And I think there was a question we asked of Clarion, which we still haven't got the response, was did they go down the route of the formal pre-application process? Okay. But either way, it's concerning that it's another example where the developer, housing association, and what planning department aren't marrying up, okay, which is concerning.
I don't want to put Nick on the spot here, so I won't. But
through you, I've not actually logged into our back office system, and it'll take about 10 minutes to do so. So I couldn't give you an answer right here and now, but I can certainly do so by the end of the meeting.
We'll talk out a meeting on that one, Nick. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we need discussion with Clarion as well, because they've obviously told us one thing, you're telling us something else, and what we're saying is it doesn't quite marry up. So that's my concern. So.
Any other comments? Councillor Mrs. Hay.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things I wanted to bring up. One of which is something that is not actually on the previous actions, but within the minutes. Councillor Miscambin did ask about the Start Grow initiative and was told the scheme concluded in December 22 and the total grant award figures are currently being finalised, but will be shared with ONS panel during the next meeting. Do we have any update on that?
I haven't personally. Councillor, sorry. Anna, could you come in there? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Councillor Mason, that's colleagues are here from the Combined Authority and Start Grow. So the Overview and Scrutiny panel will getting all of the detailed information in relation to the scheme in the next agenda item.
One other thing, I did bring this up at full council, but I'd like to bring it up again today to see if there's any further update. And that's about the shared arrangements in planning with Peterborough. Now, I was led to believe that it's still under review at Peterborough. Has that review concluded in Peterborough? And do we know exactly if any support is going to be provided?
Well, again, we have Nick here. Could you answer that one, Nick, off the top of your head? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's been confirmed from Peterborough City Council that they're withdrawing all of the support that they currently give us. We did ask for an extension, but that's been turned down. So as of 1st of April, we don't have any direct support from Peterborough in respect to planning policy, Section 106s and associated management, ecology and strategic housing.
Presumably that also includes the local plan.
Yes, that's what I meant by planning policy. Forgive me, Chairman.
Okay, so that answer is minuted. Thank you. Councillor, anything else? Councillor Booth.
Just on that point, Chairman, will we be discussing that later on the agenda, or is it worth further exploring that now? Because my concern is the extra cost and delay that's going to cause with the development of the local plan, because obviously the officers that we've had working on it from Peterborough have got in-depth knowledge. If we're going to have to start afresh with new people, it's going to cost more and it's going to delay the actual development of the local plan, which is already probably 2 years behind the original schedule.
Can we discuss that one later? Yeah, fine. Thank you. For my purposes, if nobody else is, could I ask the visitors please to introduce themselves by name? Some of you I know and some I don't. I'll start with Fliss, I think it is. Thank you.
Could you use your microphone?
Sorry, yes, thank
Because
you.
It doesn't come through on the recording.
Is it the red one?
Yeah.
Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's it.
Very
Thank you.
good. Sorry, I didn't even see that. So yeah, I'm Fliss Miller and I am the interim associate director for skills at the Combined Authority.
Good afternoon, I'm Jonathan Finlay. I'm the PMO service lead for the Growth Programme, assisting the Programme Director, Richard Kuda.
Hello, I am Rebecca Beckmeta. I am leading on the Inward Investment Service for the Growth Works Programme.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Kuda. I'm the Program Director for the whole of the Growth Works Service. And we also have some of our other colleagues online who will introduce themselves now.
Thank you.
Hi, shall I go first? I'm Martin Johnson. I run the coaching and grants service line within GrowthWorks, and I'm coming in from a remote location.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gareth Priest. I'm the Managing Director of the Skills Service Line for GrowthWorks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Clark. I'm the Interim Associate Director for Business at the Combined Authority.
Good afternoon. I'm Nigel Parkinson. I'm the Non-Executive Director and Chair of the Cambridge and Peterborough Growth Company Limited.
Thank you.
And good afternoon. I'm Ed Coleman. I'm Deputy Head of Policy and Public Affairs at the Combined Authority.
Thank you. We have a plethora there, don't we? So we'll proceed with the meeting. I understand there'll be a presentation made at this particular point. Is that correct?
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Yeah. No worries. Thank you, Chairman and Councillors, for allowing us to present today. It's an important opportunity for us to present to you the fantastic work that we've been doing across the program, but also more specifically for Fenland District Council. We look forward to your feedback today and also your questions. The program has been going now for 2 years. It's been a great success. I think it's important to start by setting the scene for the program as a whole, the context of where we came from, and then we'll focus specifically on each service line and the work that they have been doing within the Fenland district. So without further ado, I will kind of start with the program overview. I appreciate that you think there's a plethora of thousands today, but we did want to definitely bring the A team. So what we've also done is ask all of the stream leads to join, who have teams that are active every day on patch here. What they will do is they will get behind the data and actually give real life examples of where things have worked incredibly well and things we need to continue to do, and where things haven't worked, and we can feed that back to you to inform your conversations, to help you in terms of making the changes that need to happen in order to get some of these things unlocked as well. So if we focus on this slide for a second, so this is the overall program, and what you saw the effect of the troubles in Eastern Europe, which consequently had a knock-on effect on global prices, particularly energy, and that's where it started to put a lot of pressure on businesses, in particular, for what would generally be considered discretionary spending or spending towards growth, where they actually doubled down on OPEX and CAPEX expenditure. What did that mean for the program? Well, it meant that we needed to refocus, change. We presented a board paper for the CPCA in recognition of this. But we still managed to maintain a very healthy buffer up until the end of the year at 9.5%. Recognising that that was continuing to trend down, the board paper did call out the need to be more flexible with our revenue grants. So we had a PCR presented and that was approved, and we have some big events happening, which Martin, our colleague who runs the growth coaching service, will give you insight on. But it also helped us kind of in terms of where we should focus, what's been working, what hasn't, and doubling down on the non-volume services. To the extent you don't see it here because we're only entered the Q9, but where our safety buffer of jobs was 9.5% back up to 10.5%. So in short, the program continues to perform. We're above where we should be. We are starting to now grow that buffer in terms of jobs because we just don't want to get that jobs target. We want to overperform on it. And it is all the more remarkable result considering the macroeconomic environment that we are in. There is continued pressure on the economy. There is continued pressure on prices. That is having a flow-on effect to businesses, however we are responding to that. So that's just a bit on the broader program. In the next slide, you'll see our performance for all the districts. But in short, the total, so that our target by end of year 2 was 2,719. We've achieved 2,974.5. Appreciate that the 0.5 does look interesting, but that's in recognition of how many we use FTE equivalent. So the half is just a half-time role that was onboarded. But if we focus on Fenland's, overall, we've achieved 310 jobs over the course of the program. We are doing a lot more on patch. We are here to work with you. Obviously, we can always do a little bit more, and we think it's important to work with you on that. But we're also here to give our feedback where things haven't worked, how we can inform some of your conversations to other authorities that have the power to make some of these changes. You also see as well that we've had a number of significant learning outcomes as well. And the apprenticeships, appreciate that there's a few, or that there's been the introduction recently last year of a new college. I think Gareth's doing work there in order to start to see the flow of those outcomes, but that should hopefully start to come in over the course of the year. What we will do is focused, because you see that we've got everything by service line. What we will do over the course of the rest of the presentation is break that down by individual service line. As always, if you have questions, feel free to call them out as we continue to go through the presentation. Otherwise, we're happy to table any questions at the end.
Are there any questions at the moment? Councillor Booth.
Yeah, on I think page 3 where you've got the SME CapEx grants. I noticed that Fenland's got the smallest contribution. I think it's referred to a couple of slides later on, 21,000. I was under the impression we were going to be one of the priority areas, and we've got less than 10% of the investment. Why is that?
So in terms of Fenland being one of the priority areas, we've actually created a weighting system that puts Fenland right at the top. So in terms of that happening, there's one that we're presenting to the panel. Martin, did you want to jump in as well? Sorry, I've got the head of the grant service on the line as well. Hi, Martin.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, so I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Martin, we can hear you fine.
Okay, so yeah, I would say we have a number of good success stories in the Fenland area. I mean, one of them that you've probably heard of more than enough is turmeric. But we also have another big one coming up right at the moment that we're going to be putting in front of the board just next week, which is Agrimec out of Manea, who are essentially creating a manufacturing facility which will double their capabilities to build machinery which is exported both into Europe and the US. So they're going to be getting about 100k of something like a 400k project to essentially build and expand their manufacturing capability by doubling it. So I think there are some success stories in Fenland, and as Rich says, we give them a higher weighting when it comes to deciding which ones will go forward to the Secretariat, which is our internal assessment, before it goes on to the representatives from the business board. So we're out there in Fenland making the connections, and we're not adversely marking down anything from Fenland, quite the reverse. So if anybody knows of a company that could do with some capital expenditure assistance, we're all ears.
Thank you. Councillor Wicks.
Can I ask the location of the company you've just mentioned, please?
It's Manea, and the company is called Agrimec.
Do you mean Maney?
Could do.
Maney, yeah.
I'm doing a phonetic pronunciation.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that explanation, but I mean, the evidence doesn't really support your answer with, you know, as I say, £21,000. I mean, that's not even the average wage for one person.
No, sorry to interrupt, but I think there's a confusion there. The 20k is what we call the revenue grants, which are OPEX grants. They're nudge grants for consulting, coaching, and for other purposes. The CapEx grants are at least 140, 150k so far, and we're just about to close to double that with the assuming it's approved with Agrimec. So I think maybe that was a misconception there.
Right. Well, the report definitely says 21 for Fenland District Council on page 3 or page 10 of the report's back. So, and I think it does refer to 21,000 later on. So
that's jobs, 21 jobs.
21 jobs. Then.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, fair enough. So the actual investment you're saying is what, 140 odd thousand?
At least 140k, yeah. And putting
got
another 100k in this coming week, assuming it gets approved.
Okay, right. Right, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, that's just on that. We actually had the investment panel today, but we had to reschedule for this meeting, which we're happy to do. We're actually hoping to get that one through beforehand. But that should see that figure jump up quite significantly, both in jobs and also amount of investment. There are specific requirements also to qualify. You know, some businesses will kind of put things forward that are OPEX, not capital expenditure. So we need to work with them and we need to take them through the process. There is a bit where obviously our teams are very active on patch, but I will double down on Martin's call out. We're happy to work with you if there are businesses that you know of. Please introduce them to us, because we're very happy to help them. We're also very happy to support them with these funds to grow. As we said, so to give it a little bit more context, and, you know, particularly if we look at things like the nudge grants that, you know, Hunt's as far outseeding Cambridge, you know, and in terms of the levelling up agenda, we appreciate that Cambridge probably has a few things it doesn't need as much help as some of the other regions. So, for example, on the CapEx, the way it is skewed, I believe it's a 1 for Cambridge in terms of weighting, and a 10 if the CapEx recipient is coming from Fenland. That makes up about 30% of the overall score.
It does. There are a number of things that we look at, and part of the assessment is the bubble to the surface of the sort of key characteristics of whether it be a particularly sustainable or whatever. But the key one that we do put on is whereabouts in the region those jobs are going to be created. That is the paramount consideration.
Can I bring Councillor Scanlon in, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I attended, as Chris probably knows, an impromptu skills committee meeting this morning for overview and scrutiny at CBCA. Various questions were brought up about the data within the programme that you've got now for the CBCA skills committee next week. And one of the shortfalls seems to be Peterborough, through Councillor Andy Coles, says that Peterborough does well for grants because they can fill the forms in properly. What help is being given from the CPCA to the lesser councils that don't fill in the forms, aren't able to fill in? They haven't got the officer time to fill in the forms, so therefore miss out. And this is a problem throughout the whole area. Also, it was noted that you're lacking supply people to actually do these apprenticeships within the area of Fenland. And this was noted this morning. So it is a concern to this council, who I represent here, that we're not getting a fair deal out of this. It's economically unviable for Fenland to continue with it. So what's being done to help us and our clients to get these jobs done?
I'm just double checking, everyone. That was a skills question, yeah?
Skills question.
Can
Yes,
you
it
hear
was
me
a
all right?
skills question. Fliss wasn't unable to attend this morning.
Oh, yeah, I'm not invited to that meeting actually, so it's not that I wasn't unable to attend. So, sorry, can you just clarify the second point around this? Well, both points actually. What forms are we talking about? And then what's the supply challenge?
The forms are the agenda for the skills committee, which takes place next week, I believe. The skills committee, and it's on the agenda of that you are struggling to find suppliers within Fenland, and you're paying, or we assume you're paying, because the data seems to point that way, for pupils to go to other areas from the budget for this area. And that's just not on. You need to have suppliers in this area to satisfy the needs of our constituents, and that's not happening.
I'm sorry, when you're talking suppliers, are you referring to training providers?
Yes.
Okay, so there are a number of suppliers, training providers we have in the area, and we as a combined authority has just invested in the North Cambridgeshire Training Centre. We have the College of West Anglia. We also have a number of national providers who are providing training courses within the area. So we're doing a number of things. So we've just launched a training provider network, a forum. So therefore, we're trying to get all of our training providers to work better together to understand the geography. So we do have providers. I do think we have enough providers, but as a combined authority, we're doing more to make sure that we're getting our providers to work together, to make sure there are progression pathways, that our providers are working together to therefore make sure that there are those opportunities. In terms of apprenticeship take up wider than this programme, Fenland actually does quite well in terms of apprenticeships, and the figures are growing. So I don't personally, I don't know what was discussed this morning, but that isn't the picture that I see.
Well, that's what came across this morning from another member of the Overview and Scrutiny who, like me, has read through the paperwork. It just doesn't tally up. Are we getting value for money? And on the face of it, no, we're not. So it needs to be looked at quite seriously. The providers, delivery companies, the boot camps, how successful are they? We don't know anything about it. There's no feedback on how your boot camps are working. So what's going on? There isn't enough. There's a lot of data within the sheets this morning that we were reading, but there wasn't anything that you could look substantially at. And we couldn't disseminate from it what was useful and what wasn't useful. I think officers tend to run away and write reports that contain a lot of data that doesn't really mean much until you actually drill down into it. And we don't have the time to sit there and do it. There's a lot of what's called official gobbledygook within those reports, and it doesn't need to be there.
Can I just come back on that? So skills boot camps is not a conversation. I think we're talking about growth works and skills. So I think boot camps is a very separate issue, and there isn't a paper going to skills committee on boot camps. But I would suggest perhaps that we focus on growth works with skills, and anything wider I can pick up outside.
I agree entirely with that. I take the points that Councillor Scanlon is bringing up, but we're here today to talk about growth works and not skills. So if we continue on that particular theme, I know it is part of it, but it's not the whole total today. Councillor Wicks.
Yeah, if I may pick up on a number of points that's just been mentioned. One, you're saying there are a number of providers of training and skills. Are we going to be privy to know who these providers are so that we can distribute it within our own environments? The other one you've mentioned is apprenticeships. Now, I'm going to ask the question, can you break down the number of apprentices you have that are postgraduate and those that are plus 18? Because they're two totally different animals when it comes down to the bottom line.
Again, if we're looking at the wider skills provision, I can definitely get those figures for you. We have a dashboard which tells me apprentices at level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, not 8, up to level 7. It tells me what sectors they're in. It tells me who delivers them, and completion, succession. So I can give you all of that. Again, apprenticeships is just a small part of the Growth Works programme, but if we go wider, that is data I can give you. Yeah.
If I may, I much appreciate that, given the questions that were asked last year, and it turned out that what was being presented to us and what was an actual fact were two totally different beasts, of which we still haven't had clarification at this committee here today, and that's over a year ago. I will continue onwards with the growth works. By Market Town, how much success has there been by the individual market towns on your actual work that you're conducting?
So, point of clarity, if I can, please, Chair. So, in terms of, are you looking for all of the Growth Works programme rather than just report it at the district level? Are you asking for a breakdown by each individual market town? Within the district, okay. Can you respond? I don't know the level of data.
Yeah, so we basically go down to the district. If we think of the context and when it was put together, there was no actual provision in terms of actually reporting for districts in the actual program. However, we recognise the importance of it, so we do it. We have a system, a CRM system called HubSpot. There's no provision on us to go down to that level. What we can do is look at where the jobs, apprenticeships and so forth has come from and just give you a data export, and it will have that captured in there in terms of the towns within the region. But in terms of where we need to get to across the whole program, we don't drill down to that level of detail. However, we can give you a data export of that, of basically where they've been achieved in what town, because we do capture that data on our CRM system.
If I may continue, my point here is Cambridge County Council has a policy, a very green policy. Here we are with an opportunity to actually deliver employment within commuting distance rather than making people commute, which I'm going to pick point Cambridge as being the focal point where most of the activity is taking place. Isn't there a duty on you to actually work towards this green environment where jobs are on our doorstep rather than making people commute, which is not exactly very green?
I'm sorry, I don't follow. Is it a green question? Is it a jobs question? Is it both?
It's both, because it is creating jobs within the local environment, and i.e. it could be remote working, but we're seeing most of the activity taken not in Fenland, where we have the tools, the cheapest land prices in Cambridgeshire to actually develop an industry and employment, but it's not happening.
So the jobs and the outcomes there are in Finland. You made a point about remote working. We can't capture remote working. That doesn't count as a job outcome. That is the remit of the program. The jobs have to be in region. For example, and I will explain, if you had an inward investor from kind of, let's say, Singapore, right? And they got a remote office here in Finland, but all their jobs remote, that's not actually contributing to the district council. So we aren't allowed to capture remote jobs within the program. All the jobs listed here in Finland are for people that are working in Finland.
Yeah, point mate.
So if I may, why aren't you developing enterprise zones and hubs to actually facilitate this?
Because to be frank, it's not our job, but we're happy to work with you to help inform your conversations. We can't do planning. All we can do is help and drive growth and jobs. I mean, Simon, and if you wanted to explain a little bit better.
I think Councillor Wicks, obviously the Growth Works had a remit, and the presentation that they're providing today describes how they fulfilled that remit. I think some of the questions that you're suggesting are outside the remit of the scheme, and therefore it's quite difficult for Growth Works to respond accordingly. But clearly they're able to respond to the detail of the scheme and provide you with reassurance that the scheme has been delivered successfully to date, and answer any questions in relation to that detail. But beyond that, I think if they're more general economic growth queries, then yes, of course, Simon and I are more than happy to answer those in the next agenda item.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah, I think we are in danger of straying away from why we're here today. If I could just draw it back to being more specific, there's a couple of items in the report relating to Whittlesea. One, could someone update me on the progress of the science park as an example?
Again, I think Councillor Mason, with respect, that's probably in the next agenda item. This is very specifically about Growth Works.
Okay. The other one I was going to mention was actually the agritech proposition in Whittlesea as well. But again,
I'll pick that one up. So the agritech proposition came about through some programs that the Inward Investment team run called Market Access Programs, or MAPS for short. The reason being is when the program started, the Inward Investment Service started 2 years ago, we were one person trying to build an inward investment option, raise a profile with the Department for International Trade, who have absolutely no regional targets whatsoever. They could meet their annual target if everything went to London. They have no, it's UK first. So we were trying to find a way to, yes, work with the IT, get them to send us opportunities, also raise a regional profile outside of life sciences, and try and identify leads for our own pipeline rather than relying on the likes of Department for International Trade. So we created these market access programs, the idea being we would create collateral, go to our international networks, use our multiplier networks to promote this program, which effectively is there is a market opportunity in life sciences or advanced manufacturing or agritech. Here, click this link, apply to be part of this program. We'll put you in front of a panel of experts who can help facilitate your journey into the region. We ran initially life sciences and advanced manufacturing. So life sciences was run July last year. July 2021. Then there was an AI competition that was run in December 21. We ran a advanced engineering competition in December of last year. And the reason those sectors were initially chosen is because one, we had initially no resource to do them. So with that, right, we need to fill a pipeline. So let's do the ones where we know that we can do it because we already have a brand for that. But then actually for the advanced manufacturing and the agritech, we were trying to say, how can we coin an opportunity that is actually, yes, maybe some stuff could go to Cambridge and Peterborough, but that would actually benefit regions like FBC. So the agritech proposition was we commissioned NIAB, which is a research institution looking at, okay. We want to try and identify opportunities within this region. Obviously, we are a CPCA program, but how can we actually raise the profile of FBC in this particular sector? Can you help us create a proposition that we can then use to put into collateral, go out to market and identify companies actually where there's a specific market opportunity in this region? So that proposition was just finished before Christmas. We are just now in the early stages of creating the collateral for the program, and we are engaging the district council to suggest companies who might benefit from identifying these companies, agritech companies, into their supply chain. So the proposition was commissioned to help us sell this particular region on a global stage to attract investment for a pipeline that could actually land here. We're looking to run the competition probably in May, I believe, is when we're planning to run it. So there will be pre-marketing where we are going to be interviewing specialists, the companies who have agreed to take part of the program, and then we're going to do follow-up opportunity marketing. Now, where this could be really, really interesting, and we did this for the AI competition we ran in the end of 2021, is we had a large automotive manufacturing inward investor currently operating within the CPCA region. And they wanted to pivot and they wanted to adopt new AI technologies into their supply chain to help their efficiency, increase their efficiency. So we thought if we could get a big food and drink company who wants to do similar and adopt these technologies into its supply chain to help it become more competitive and efficient, that would be a really, really fantastic selling message, because what these companies want is they want market access. They want access to buyers. So we've got a few companies that have been put forward already in the region who think it's actually a very exciting initiative. So back to your question, the proposition was just to help us create selling messages and collateral to run these events.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that. That's very reassuring, because it is an important thing, agritech, in this particular part of the region. That's why I asked. But thank you for that. Thank you. So Booth.
Picture we did start getting on this discussion about local colleges. I probably ought to just note I do have a 0 hours contract with Peterborough Regional College, but I don't think it'll affect the delay here.
Okay. That's it. Thank you. Do you wish to continue? Yes.
Yeah, sure. We continue with the presentation. I will take this opportunity just to give a little bit more context on the overall program. So in terms of what we're here to do and what our remit is, it's basically everything you see encapsulated here. It's jobs, it's learning outcomes, and it's apprenticeships. No more than that. However, what we do is often get feedback where something is not successful as to why things don't work, and we can feed that back through to the relevant areas, obviously working closely with Anne and Simon, in order to help that information find the home where they can make those changes. Now, whether that's creating new colleges, whether that's improving a piece of infrastructure, whether that's changing planning of certain land, because that is some of the feedback we give, but we're not here to do anything in terms of making those changes. It's not our remit, it's for the broader council and potentially in certain cases Westminster to do that as well. In terms of how the program is measured, the point was made about commuting, the point was made about remote jobs. That's not how it works. These figures are only for jobs that are created within a particular district. So everything that's in Fenland is in Fenland. If somebody from Fenland is going for a job, say in Hunts, then that job will be captured within Huntingdonshire, vice versa as well. So just to be clear as to what our remit is and in terms of what we can capture. We think if we were allowed to capture remote working, it would be fantastic. We would get so many more wins because we think there are certain advantages to that. We also think that during COVID, the nature of working has changed, and particularly with some of these IP-rich tech companies, they have a very flexible workforce, but the program isn't flexible enough to allow us to capture. Everything has to be within the district. So, but thought it was important to give that context. Now that I have, I will pass on to Martin, who runs the growth coaching and grant service, to give a more detailed explanation of the activity that they've been doing in region. Martin, let me know when you want to move slides as well, and I'll do that for you.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be great. And you can go to the next one. Well, to echo what Rich said at the beginning, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and chat with you guys about what we're doing in Fenland. And I think we have a number of things to be proud of and a number of opportunities that we can explore together. And in fact, you know, we're doing that all the time. We have some very good communications with Anne Wardle, the EDO. We actually have someone in our team, in my team, who's assigned to have a relationship with Anne on the businesses that run in the patch in the district, as we do for each of the districts. So everyone has an assignment. The assigned person for Fenland is actually Gary Parker, who's our head of business development and the advisory service. So you've got the top guy, lives across the border in Norfolk. And the kind of things that we're doing in your area and across Peterborough and Huntingdonshire. This week, in fact, we've got two events, one that we're running tomorrow in Huntingdon, and another one that we're running with the ARU in Peterborough on Wednesday. These are events to bring in both the EDOs, but also the referral partners and customers and prospects that are on patch, to tell them about what we're doing and consult with them and essentially offer them grants as well. So there's a lot of activity this coming week, but we're also talking this week with Anne Wardle on putting some business breakfasts together at a couple of innovation centres you have. We're also sponsoring the Fenland Business Awards towards the end of March. But how do we engage with your district? Well, we send a newsletter twice a month about you know, what we're doing, what we can offer, how we can help businesses. And I'm happy to say that about 60% of the SMEs in Fenland actually receive that newsletter. So there is, I would say, some pretty good penetration into the business community as to what GrowthWorks can offer. And just as to compare with a couple of neighbouring districts, Peterborough is a bit higher. We're reaching 75%, but Huntingdonshire, we're actually only reaching 53%. So I think 60% is a pretty good measure of how we're making the GrowthWorks coaching and grants service visible to those on patch. Now, the way that we get a customer to engage with us is something called a diagnostic, but it's essentially an expression of interest. Across the whole of the CPCA region, the number of SMEs that have provided one of these expressions of interest, a diagnostic, is about 12%. In Fenland, it's 10%. There are two other districts where it's 6 and 8%. So I would say that that's not bad. So there is engagement occurring between the businesses in Fenland and with my team. So I think there's opportunity there to do better. There always is, and we're trying to do that, and we have been trying for some time to improve the engagement level between us and your EDO. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing in region. Is there any questions about that? Okay, good. Now, in terms of grants, and I think if you go forward a couple of slides, Rich, there'll be some detail on grants, which in next one, I think, next one or two. There you go, keep going. So this is a breakdown of the grants that have been awarded. So is this stellar? No, there's plenty of opportunity to do more. We're very happy to speak with anybody from Fenland who would like to come and get some consulting and some coaching and some grants from us. We don't hold back from any district. Every district knows what we do. Every district is communicated with, and as Rich implied earlier, we actually mark Fenland's higher in our scoring sheet when we come to look at a capex investment. So we are very happy to do more work with you guys to improve the penetration of our service into your business community, and in awarding grants. We're not in the business of holding back. One of the interesting statistics that I dragged out was that the first engagement that a customer has with us is this expression of interest, this diagnostic. There's usually a bit of drop off between diagnostic, which is the supply of half a dozen pieces of information, and is an expression of interest. There's usually some drop off between that and a firm enrollment from the customer and a commitment to go ahead with coaching, with any of the grants, whether they be OPEX style, which we call revenue grants, or indeed CAPEX. And that drop off is generally about 50%. It's where we just cannot get an enrollment form out of these people. They express an interest, but then they don't move forward. It's the same percentage for Fenland as it is for the rest of the patch. So I don't think there's any difference in the way that Fenland businesses are responding and committing themselves to working with GrowthWorks on the coaching and grants side. Are there any questions coming out of that so far?
Yeah, Councillor Booth.
Sorry.
Just to, I guess, sort of clarify the point I was making earlier about the amount of investment or grants that are awarded to Fenland. I did some erroneous calculations, I believe, so it was probably about 10%. But what is the actual proportion of grants coming into Fenland as a total of the budget?
Well, the total amount that we have had over the last year and a half is in the region of 4 million. And my calculations show that we're well north of the 144 that you can see on screen there. I think there are a couple of others that are potentially missing. So the percentage is, call it maybe 250,000 over 4.
So that's still quite a low percentage out of the total budget, isn't it, Fenland?
It depends. Well, there's 6. It depends on which way you look at it. The number of businesses in the Fenland area that would be eligible for these kind of grants is about 800 businesses. That's 800 out of 7,900. So you've got about 10% of the businesses in the entire CPCA region that would get these kind of grants, and these kind of grants go to SMEs that have 3 to 249 people, employees. So it is from, in many respects, it is a smaller region. Doesn't mean to say it should get fewer opportunities, and it has the same opportunities as all the rest. It's really a function of whether businesses decide to respond. It's a function of events that we might put on in the region. We do specific reach out to the EDOs to work with all of them on creating these opportunities, and we work fairly across the entire region. Some regions respond with a little more vigor than others, but we don't block anybody, and we don't remove anybody from some magic list of awareness. We're making people aware via a number of the digital channels, primarily LinkedIn, but also Facebook. We do the twice monthly newsletter blast, as we sometimes call it, which has got all of the workshops, all of the events that we're running. This goes into the Fenlands as much as it goes anywhere else. So it's really about the appetite to respond, perhaps, that would generate more of the budget coming your way. We're not holding back. I would just put it that way.
But I guess what my observation would be is that we're probably not investing as much into Fenland per capita for people that live here and businesses as other areas, and yet this is an area of deprivation which desperately needs that investment to actually grow the area and grow the sort of jobs and skills mix. And
yeah, and to be honest, if anyone wants to come up with a list of companies that could really do with that kind of investment, that capital investment, we'd be all over them like a rash. We don't hold back when it comes to anybody expressing interest in working with us and taking advantage of any of the grants, whether they be revenue or capex. And we have gone out of our way, if I'm to put it that way, between us and the skills team, between Gary and Chris McKechnie, to make a lot of contact with Fenlands to try and forge the relationships and provide you and your constituents with as much support as we can. So I guess to say that that is not enough could be true. My offer to you is let's work together and see how we can improve that.
I suppose supplementary to that then is obviously we've got the economic growth team here at Fenland. Would you say you've got good close working relationship with them? And is that?
Yeah, we know Anne, and in fact we've been trying to get together with Anne, both Gary and Chris McKechnie, as the gentleman from Skills, working in Gareth's organisation, number of months before Christmas, and they were informed, well, let's wait until after Christmas. So it isn't for the want of trying, but I guess people have priorities.
Yeah. Can I bring in Councillor Scanlon, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Glad to hear about your events in Huntingdon and Peterborough. Have you or are you considering holding similar events within the Fenland area? Because as you say, there are a number of companies in the Fenland area that could probably benefit from this, and to hold a business event would probably be quite useful for some of these companies to know that there are grants there, because yes, they probably get a piece of paper through the door, but it usually gets placed in the waste paper bin quite quickly as a brochure, and we all know that happens. But to actually have an event, and we've got the venues throughout Fenland in the towns and here at Fenland Hall that could certainly hold such an event.
And we have made that offer already, and that's the subject of our discussion with Anne on Thursday of this week, are the two events that we're proposing. I think you've got a couple of innovation centres there in the district. So we absolutely want to invest in creating that awareness through business events. And we're sponsoring your Fenland Business Awards, not with a ton of money, but some money at the end of March.
Anna, would you like to come in now?
Yes, if I can. I think in addition, I think we do work really well with GrowthWorks. It's obviously in our very best interest to do so, so that we are enabling and getting our grants into the district to businesses that need them and that, to enable them to flourish and prosper. There's been considerable comms in relation to the scheme, both through inserts to NNDR bills, but also a dedicated comms campaign. We provide newsletters. It's all over the Economic Growth Twitter feed and our social media. We're providing information to elected members to act as that champion if you are aware of any businesses locally. And I think that was part of the feedback from last time, that maybe we weren't as proactive in relation to that as we could have been. And we recognise that was a gap, and we've breached that, you know, we've bridged that gap. So we're really keen to hear about those businesses. I think, though, it is tricky. I think businesses have found it tricky to engage, and therefore we need to think more, get our collective brains together about how we might be able to engage businesses more effectively, given some of the pressures that they're working under that Richard alluded to earlier around, you know, energy bills going up and that being the focus of some businesses' minds. So we do need to work differently. It's seen as a bit of a distraction from the day job sometimes. And that's why the case studies have been so fundamentally important, to be able to promote actually at grassroots level what the benefits of some of these schemes have been, so that we can continue to promote it and businesses can see that actually that could be us that benefits in that way, and they can then interpret the information and think, actually, how could it benefit us individually, and what are our aspirations? So that's what, you know, what we've been doing on the ground level, and it's working very well. And that's why there's lots of, as you see, case studies in terms of the presentation to continue in that mode.
Absolutely.
I mean, it sounds like there's a bit of disconnect between the Fenland and the growth work scheme here, because it sounds like we're not as engaging as quickly as we could be from the comments that have been made. And I think that's, well, I think Martin said that he'd sort of offered before Christmas, and they said after Christmas. Well, what's that, a few months, and it's still not taken place. That doesn't seem very proactive to me. I know local government moves slowly, and I've often said it moves too slowly at times, particularly if you're dealing with the commercial sector. So I think that needs to be looked into and explored, and we need to improve those lines of communication to improve the opportunities for businesses in this area.
Absolutely agree, and that's why we're meeting on Thursday. So let's have a lively discussion with some good outcomes.
I think what I'm sensing here is that Fenland has specific requirements. They are totally different to requirements in Peterborough, Cambridge, etc. I think there needs to be a greater understanding of what our requirements are, and perhaps a better liaison between the Growth Works team and the officers here in Fenland, so we identify those opportunities and move forward. And I think that's where the stumbling block is, that we don't totally understand where Fenland needs the help. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd agree with that. We welcome that engagement. I think particularly with the officers on the ground as well, we have a good relationship with our community development team, but we're happy to broaden that out. I think the program is in its last year in the current guise, but there is the opportunity for a +1+1, and we need to consider that in the midst of it. It was created on a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, and whether we need to review specific things to focus on for particular areas. And we also need to, where something is not within our gift, work with you constructively to help you create the arguments to make those changes.
That's the point, really, isn't it? I mean, I think there's a danger of talking generally on this subject, whereas in fact we are specific. Like, for example, what's happening in Wisbech, what's happening in Whittlesea, etc. Not what's happening in Cambridge or Peterborough. With respect, we don't really want to know that. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Say that.
I mean, on that, everything now is just Finland's focused. Yeah. Martin, I think there was a question earlier on Start and Grow, and I think you get that in the next few slides. So should we?
Yeah, we should go on to that. I mean, and I think there's a we might call a pin drop. That's one of the many success stories that I think it was Anne that was speaking earlier alluded to, and I believe that there's at least Anne has a quarterly update pack from us that came in just before Christmas. It's got actually probably half a dozen success stories. So if you want to talk about Start and Grow, you should move on perhaps one slide or two slides. So this is a picture of Fenland's. It's a pin drop of who we've actually who've sent a expression of interest for CRF. So this is a different fund. It's not one that I run personally. Excuse me, but I know a little bit about it. So we have a number of jobs that have been created and safeguarded in the area. We've put a lot of effort, according to the person who actually runs the CRF program, who couldn't be here today because they're elsewhere, and not even in the country, in fact. There has been a lot of extra effort put into Fenland for CRF, more than has been expended in other districts. And that is because there is there is an understanding that there are a lot of companies that could benefit from the CRF Start and Grow program. I guess one thing that I ought to say at this point is that drilling down into any further data is the subject of a independent study across the entire CPCA region, including obviously Fenland, run by Metro Dynamics. And so it would be premature to, if you like, drill into any further data until that analysis is completed, which is within weeks. So I think we may have to come back at some point with further analysis, and I think that may well come from CPCA directly, that we deliver the service to. I don't know whether, Steve, you wanted to add a few comments at that point.
Yeah, happy to. And yes, agree with your suggestion that it should come back from CPCA as soon as that evaluation is available. Just to point out, this particular programme was a programme of support for individuals who were considering starting a business. So that's a pre-start kind of scenario. And then businesses that had literally just started up or were less than 2 years old to get supported. So you have a big mixture of different types of beneficiaries within this program. We have a number of businesses listed and that would have drawn grants through the program, but there were a number of workshops, mentoring, one-to-one sessions with lots and lots of groups of individuals, one-to-ones as well with individuals, exploring the whole premise of starting a business. Some of those would have taken it forward, some wouldn't. So there's an awful lot of data and learning from within this program, which is why it's taken a little while to get this. We want to get everything out of it we can from the evaluation to obviously use it to inform the economic development team and anyone else and any other policy making that we're looking at in terms of this type of support, pre-start, startup type support, which isn't hugely covered in all parts of the region. So, I mean, in terms of activity, just the general headline numbers, in the end, there were 228 leads, which were part of the program in Fenland. And obviously you see the stat on the next slide, which is, it says 42, it's actually 47 I have seen in this latest set of evaluation data. 47 businesses or individuals who took forward drawing a grant, which is what that figure relates to. Obviously, there were a lot more people, as I've said, 228, who actually got some form of support from the programme. And some of those may well come back later if they didn't get a grant in this particular time frame. The programme was nationally led. It was a very, very short period of delivery, this programme. By the time it was commissioned and started, we ran sort of from April to December really last year. And nationally, Community Renewal Fund was all about testing ideas and innovations, rather like pilots, to inform. The Shared Prosperity Fund was the concept, but it's to inform any future programs. The Start and Grow was the single biggest CRF project in the country, and it's got considerable attention from departments like DWP, who are very keen to see the evaluation report because they're very interested in that whole strand of enterprise as part of obviously getting people back into work and as a strand of activity. I'll pause there.
Any comments or questions on that?
I'll hand over to Rebecca now, who will give an update on the Inward Investment Service.
Thanks, Richard. So let's go through the number slide a little bit, but I think before we do that, it's probably helpful just to give a little bit of context about the Inward Investment Service. We are a very different service than perhaps the rest of the program, because we are looking to identify and attract companies that are not already within the CPCA region into the region. And I would say for the first 6 months of the program, there was one person. For the following 6 months, there was two. And then we brought on an additional 4 people in probably the first part of the 2022. So the first challenge was creating awareness within the rest of the DIT network, this global network, that there was this new inward investment service within the region. Because historically, anything that had come from DIT would either get missed out or they would claim it, but nobody was actually involved in the region. So that's the first part. The second challenge actually is the inward investment globally. It's not always about where it goes within the CPCA, it's where it goes internationally. A lot of the companies that we work with are internationally mobile. So the UK is not always preferred location. The company is competing with Europe, with the US, with Singapore, depending on the sector. So there's 3 tiers you have to go through in that respect. There's also changing the perception of anything outside of Cambridge is rural. So if you're, getting a company even to consider anything outside of Cambridge, and actually even for Peterborough, that's a challenge as well, because international companies, they've heard of Oxford, they've heard of Cambridge, they've heard of London, but everything else is putting things in perspective. So it's also making companies aware of the geospatial relationships between areas in the UK. Whereas if you're a Canadian, US, or Australian investor, the distance is minimal. It doesn't mean anything. 38 minutes on a train is nothing, but it's changing that perception, not only of the people making the decision, but oftentimes of the directors in the company in the whole market. So if you've got a senior management team coming over from, I don't know, Chicago or Melbourne, trying to tell them that, yes, you're going to get off the plane in Heathrow, train to Stansted, and mapping it out, their perception immediately is, well, that's too long. But you just come off a 15-hour flight, it's educating the companies making the decision. Now, having said that, we do have a very, very good working relationship with the EDOs here. In fact, Anne and I actually were ex-colleagues in a previous life when we were delivering consultancy work for the Department of International Trade. We do have some good examples of companies that have landed. Turmeric, we were engaged very heavily with Anne and the team to attract this food and drink company from London into Finland, even making connections to potential buyers for the company to secure that. We have a very live opportunity at the moment with an Indian inward investor who is currently negotiating the purchase of a property within Finland to support a 60-job facility looking at creating 60 R&D jobs. It's in the nutraceutical industry. So we had hosted a visit in the region for this company. It's a case study. I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. But trying to put Finland on the radar for these companies, because they won't have been aware. They will have been aware of Cambridge, London, Oxford, but it's actually showcasing the region and the opportunities in a light. So just looking at this case study for Batista Industries, we've been engaging for this company for over a year now, right? And that's something else to learn about the life cycle of an inward investment. Obviously, every company is different, every decision-making process is different, every company requirements is different. But we like to say that on average, from first engagement to setting up and employing their first hire takes on average 18 months. So considering that we've been going for 2 years, it's constant engagement. It's not a one-stop shop. Often, oh, sorry, it's not just a one touch and you're done. These companies look to our service as the answer to all their questions, some of which are within our gift, others are not. So for instance, the company that I'm speaking about now wanted us to negotiate his lease on their behalf. That is just not something I can do. I'm not a commercial real estate lawyer, so probably they wouldn't get the desired outcome. So that is, we leave that to the commercial sector to deliver. But for this particular company, we are working very closely with the Department for International Trade in India to put together a visit program for this company. And they were visiting multiple sites across the CPCA region. Now, we had a very quick lead time, which often is the case. We'll just get an email that say, we're coming over on this dates. These are the dates I'm going to be in your area. Put me together a program. So we do work very closely with the EDOs to showcase each district in the best possible light. For this particular visit, they had senior management team visiting from India. There were a few sites in HDC and a few sites in FDC. But companies don't always tell us what they've got on their agenda. So we'll put together a program and then they will have decided they wanted to do something else. So the day of the visit, scheduled visit to FDC, the CEO of this company called us and said they wanted to cancel the FDC portion of the visit. So the responsible, the team member that was kind of leading on this particular opportunity spent 45 minutes on the phone with this company to convince them why they should come to FDC, and that the property actually met their specs to the T. So we did actually convince them to come to the region. They did their multiple site visit, and they're currently negotiating the purchase of 20 Eastwood and Industrial Estate in Finland. This has been a very time-consuming company. I think there's also an element where you have to be aware of cultural differences and expectations. You know, for instance, it's very common in this company's particular home market to barter on costs to the point where to get freebies and to get kind of things just given to them, you know, because you're government, you've been over backwards. But that's just not how it works. You know, a commercial real estate lawyer will say, this is my price, these are my terms, but I can't get involved in this conversation. So we've had a lot of conversations like that with this company. So as soon as this site, the purchase has been completed, it will be an inward investor for the region. The team also works very, very hard to where there is an opportunity to do so, to showcase Finland properties on our propositions. So oftentimes companies will get engaged with, they might not be thinking about CPCA at all. Our first challenge is think about the region, look at everything it has to offer, but also really articulating what the market opportunity for these companies are. Because ultimately, inward investment is a business support service. The decision on where to invest is going to be a commercial decision that's driven by the leadership of a company and its directors. So it's trying to showcase what the market opportunity is for a company and what their operating cost is going to look like. So one of the things my team will do is if the company is looking at multiple countries, let's say, we will help showcase what their overall operating costs will be like, you know, taking into, you know, is there kind of any issues to be aware of regarding repatriating your profits, what your operating costs, your salary costs, your energy costs are going to be, and we'll be able to benchmark the UK in this perspective against multiple locations. And it's creating that compelling narrative about, first of all, why the UK, then why CPCA, and then actually you think you want to go to Cambridge, but you probably don't need to be there because of cost, because of congestion, because of the type of industry you're in. It doesn't make sense. So kind of showcasing the region. Cambridge is always going to be a draw, but yes, you want to be near Cambridge, but you are. Look how close it is. Look how you can get the skilled workforce from these regions coming to your company to work. It's all about creating that narrative. Rich, can you just go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So I think the thing, and again, we want to work with the team to really showcase Fenland in the best possible light. How can we crack what the market opportunity is? I think the agritech one will be a really, really interesting opportunity. And we're working with the EDO team here on a few different opportunities. One such company is a Peru-based agritech called BioNatural Solution, where we put Finland forward as a potential location for the company. Because of their industry, they want to have access to fruit importers and growers. So Finland has some of the best arable land in the UK. It's a perfect place for them. But what we're hearing over and over again from the companies we're trying to attract is the availability of space now. So this particular company, they wanted a shared lab space, but there was no such opportunity or no such site readily available now or within the next 18 months for this company to land. Now, a few sites were put forward, but they would have had to been considerable cost by the company to completely refurbish this particular site to make it fit for what the company needs. Now, if you're a scaling company, or even more so, if you're VC backed, that's not where they want to see the funds go, into repurposing property. So likewise, the Whittlesea Science Park is a really, really interesting proposition, but the planning hasn't been approved today. And my understanding is it's also not going to be ready within 18 months. So I guess our ask is, let us know if sites are coming up, if planning changes, so we can start putting this out to the marketplace. Because it's not just about, giving a property to a company and they will come. It's about the wider narrative, but also raising the profile of places in Finland with the DIT. Hey, guess what? We have this new lab space on the market in Whittlesea, in March, in Chatteris, wherever it might be. This is the kind of company we're looking to attract. Help us fill our pipeline of companies. So we do absolutely need it, because all the best intentions of the world, if there's no place for companies to land, they're going to go somewhere else. We had a really great opportunity for a Dutch food and drink grower who was looking at sites in Finland, again, for the same reason. The crop is brilliant. You've got the access to the R&D cluster in Cambridge, the manufacturing kind of cluster around Whittlesea and Peterborough, but they wanted to be near the land. There was just no property available that met their requirements. So they ended up purchasing a site in the north. So my team, we obviously there's going to be, if you're a life sciences company that you need access to universities and R&D centers, and it's Cambridge, Oxford, or London, that's what it's going to be. But we really want to craft what is the opportunity specifically for Finland, nowhere else that we're trying to attract. I think there's a really great message there. I think there's also something to be said around flood technologies for Dutch companies and US companies on the coastal plain. There's some brilliant opportunities to market this as a place to do business. So you have access to the studies, the growers, but we need a place to land. And I think that's what I'm hearing from the companies. That's what I'm hearing from my team, that despite our best efforts to work with Anne and Simon and the team, there's no space. So they either go to another part of the CPCA area, or even worse, they don't invest here at all.
I think it's a very exciting prospect. Thank you very much. If Bethesda do fall down at Eastwood, is there another preferred site within Fenland? Fingers crossed.
Yeah, sorry, if I can just come in relation to that point. I think Councillor Benny's made it extremely clear to us that he's wanting the economic growth team to be very proactive around sites so that we can promote them, just as Rebecca's talking about. And that's why we're working currently in terms of our development prospectus, so that we can understand the sites that do have planning permission, but yet haven't been developed yet, or are ripe for potential developments in terms of job creation, etc., or the inward investment that Rebecca so clearly articulated. And we want to be very proactive and address and understanding what's preventing those sites from coming forward now, what we can do to overcome some of those blockers, if you like, so that we do have that pipeline, so that we can then put those sites very firmly on the map in terms of attracting that inward investment. So that's something we're working on. It's not going to be resolved overnight, but it's certainly a priority for us in accordance with Councillor Benny's wishes.
Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you for that. All very exciting, and the formation of the new local plan with designated industrial areas, which is obviously what the companies are looking for, is progressing very, very quickly, and hopefully will be sort of validated within the next year, which is probably too long for some people, but it's exciting that Anna will probably be able to give you more details of the business areas that have been allocated for business development throughout Fenland, and that's looking forward to exciting times.
Okay, just like to pick up Councillor Scanlon's comments there about local plan, saying it'll be next year. I think that's a very optimistic timescale. I'm not sure if Nick can give us a more realistic one, because I understood we've got at least another public consultation stage, and then it's got to go to the planning inspector.
Yeah,
that's going to take probably 2 years minimum, I would have thought.
Hopeful.
Through you, Chairman, if I may, I'm conscious that this was something that you wanted to talk about later on in the agenda, so I will be brief. The timetable for the preparation of the local plan is published online, and as you say, we're looking at at least a 1.5–2 year period before the plan is adopted. But we've got the latest sort of twist in the tail, so to speak, with the withdrawal of services from Peterborough, and we've got a paper that's going to corporate management team in the coming weeks, and then it'll come before members over how best to proceed with the local plan and get a resource in place to be able to get the local plan to its next stage.
Which I think highlights a real timing issue here, because I think Growth Works have said there's probably another maximum 2 years for the existing contract. So by the time, if you did get a 2-year extension, we might just publish the local plan, which would have the sites located. Also, I've just picked up on the point, I think, in the report, it talks about lack of business centre spaces, and that's an issue. We know recently there's been something released from this council about the fact that they're not proceeding with the Chatteris extension that we were hoping for, and we discussed at the last overview and scrutiny. So we've got some real challenges, I think, in actually finding these locations from what I'm hearing today. So
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, on that, sooner the better, but obviously if it, when it comes, we'll support. There is 18 to 24 month development on some of these opportunities, so whenever it does become more definitive, even if it's not built yet, but we have a time frame, we can definitely start showing those properties to the right people. So, but it is good, at least by the sounds of it, there is progress being made, because it is needed, as Rebecca has shown.
Do you wish to continue with, I think the final point is growth works with skills, is that right?
Gareth, if you wanted to pick up here and let me know when you want me to change the slide.
Thank you. Yes, if you could go on to the next slide. So, so we work well in Fenland with the economic development team. We've got good relationships, and we have very positive outcomes with the companies with which we engage. Sometimes there is a lack of engagement from companies, and we see this not only with our service but also with some of the job fairs and so on, but also different. And it's interesting talking about the market towns. There's different responses in the different towns across Fenland area. So just anecdotal, but seeing more engagement around, for example, Chatteris than Wisbech, for example. But we're working closely, as I say, with the economic development team, but also with our colleagues over at Growth Coaching. That relationship and the passing off between engaged companies is much improved. We're very much around supporting companies on issues around accessing the skills they need, and not simply the straightforward brokerage into existing training provision. So we're working across all sectors, all sizes of organisations, and supporting through their ability to attract talent in, but also upskill and train and retrain their existing staff across their businesses. As we know, there's a big range of companies. What we have been very fortunate to be able to do is engage a good number of companies, because we ran a community renewal fund program as well across Fenland, and that focused on delivering training vouchers and internships. It was specifically designed for companies who were having their staff come off furlough. So it was designed to be launched at the point at the end of furlough, on the basis that people were technically employed but not actually working, and so therefore had no recourse to public funds for training. By the time the programme launched, we were well into the following year, and so the dynamics of the access to funded opportunities changed, but we were still successful in engaging a good number of companies. Internships were well received, and we've created I think a good number of jobs on the back of a relatively small pilot project, as Steve outlined, in terms of the kind of functionality of the CRF program. We move on to the next slide. I'm just going to go through these quite quickly, and then if there are any questions, then I'll happily take them at the end. Del Monte is a great example of where we've been looking at engaging with them on, as we do with a lot of our companies, on both on short, medium and long-term skills needs. So quite often there's a pinch point for a company. There's maybe a recruitment issue or something that they're dealing with, where they reach out to us, or they respond to some engagement that we've had at either events or emails or through the newsletter. And it underlies a bigger problem that we help them see through with our diagnostic tool. So we can look at immediate skills needs, so identifying the gap that they've got, and point them to independent training providers or colleges or provision locally to fill that need. But also it generally leads to a longer term conversation about the upskilling and reskilling and broader recruitment issues of those organisations, and that's where we're able to feed in to a longer term strategic conversation, but also engage with our careers and enterprise company work, so the CEC work we do, where we're engaged with all the schools and colleges around the careers information. So also highlighting the opportunities for training, apprenticeships and recruitment for residents of Fenland in businesses in Fenland, and so creating that sort of economic growth within the area. So Del Monte, an initial engagement, we've identified some training for their managers and some ESOL provision, but there's a longer term piece in there around how they make themselves an employer of choice and how they recruit. And that's not an unusual story. Not many people know exactly what goes on inside most organisations, and so we help them with all those aspects, as well as just the straightforward training and identifying the apprenticeship opportunities. You can move on to the next slide, please, Richard. Thank you. We've also another example. I mean, you can read the examples yourselves, but the Environmental Science Group Limited were engaged in CRF program, but the way that they engaged with our internships, because we were diligent in the methodology for the internships, we ensured that companies were engaged in training for the interns as they came through, as well as the CRF funding that covered their wages. And that's led to the development of effective training programs within SDS. So a real sort of a success for them, plus training for people who are now competent at SDS writing. So they've been able to access the skills they need. And the idea behind the CRF program in particular was to showcase the value of internships. But I think the broader Growth Works with Skills approach around the investment in training and development to develop and retain and train talent for the longer term is very well received. The challenges are around how we engage with the volume of companies that we need to and want to engage with. And so we're doing a lot more on site. So we've been working with North Cambridge Training Centre. We're going to be running roundtable events, and we're going to be, my colleague Mark Creech in the area will be running skills surgeries, and we'll have a series of events. So the idea behind the skills surgeries is that individual organisations can book in just a short slot to just talk through the issue they have at this moment in time, and hopefully that gives them a few pointers to take the next steps, but also then starts that relationship so that we can have the deeper conversation about training, development, apprenticeships, recruitment strategies, and so on. And it gets Growth Works with Skills front and centre in their minds as an organisation that can support them in solving their problems, essentially. If you could move on to the next slide, we'll just very quickly cover some CEC work. So Alvina Murray is the Senior Enterprise Coordinator, and she covers the Fenland area. We have very good engagement with employers. So the volumes are low, I would say, but the engagement is excellent from the companies that are engaged. We have 6 schools for traditional schools, 1 SEND and 1 alternative provision. And our Compass scores are good, which is a tool that they use to develop their career strategy. And then we're positive about the engagement and the ability for schools to be supported through the Enterprise Advisor Network too. We just move on to the next slide. I think just to highlight some of the positives and some of the challenges in there as well. And we know that there are some changes coming up within the schools, but we're well positioned to support them in developing and maintaining their careers, strategies as they go forward. I think the headline for us is we, in the initial phases of the programme, we were thin on patch, and now we have dedicated resource in Fenland District Council area, engaging frequently and regularly with businesses. We're looking at running more events and being more visible, and the engagement with companies is increasing with a good pipeline, but we are not always seeing companies respond to our kind of incentivized call to action, shall we say. So we would very much like more companies to see the benefit of an initial conversation with us. I think many are focused on running their businesses, on recruiting, and not necessarily always minded to focus on the strategic engagement around their future skills needs at this point in time. But they are coming through, and we do have the numbers to show it. And as a district, it's performing better than the other districts outside of Cambridge and Peterborough. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gareth, for that. Thank you. Are there any comments, questions? No. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our presentation, unless there's anything else that anybody wants to bring up. I'd like to thank members of the Growth Works team for being here today, and officers. And sorry, 1 or 2 more, you can't get away just yet. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, so I think part of the questioning last time you was here, was around the added jobs that were going to be created in this area, and how you measured it against what would be effectively the organic growth that these jobs would happen naturally. So, what I'm seeing is what appears to be, I don't know, sort of relatively small numbers in different areas. So what are your thoughts, comments on that? Because it doesn't seem to be very transformative, I would say, in delivery at this moment in time.
Yeah, so the first point to make is we can't capture anything unless we've contributed to it. So nothing that we show is actually organic. There's been intervention at every stage for us to kind of capture it in some shape or form. We work very closely with obviously the economic development team in order to do so. Now, in terms of it being transformative, could some things have found their way here eventually? Maybe, but without us intervening, what we do is actually, and I'll use the inward investment for example, is provide that concierge service to actually take them through all their needs and get them landed in the on ground as soon as possible. Ditto for the other services. We can't actually capture anything unless there's been some sort of involvement.
I guess my point about organic growth is, would those companies have actually been expanding, creating jobs anyway? So I think your definition of there being an interaction doesn't necessarily mean to say, it's solely down to what you've done as an organisation, because if those companies are looking to grow, they would find a way naturally anyway. Commercial businesses will generally always find a way to expand where they want to. It might be slower, so you may have speeded up the process, but I think it's, you can't say just because you've interacted, those businesses have created those jobs. That seems to be a bit far-reaching.
Could I just try and respond to that? I think just to give you an example, I'm sure Martin would back me up on this. As we go through, for example, in a CapEx grant, there are a number of filters we go through the Secretariat and the panel, and those are the questions around to what extent this intervention is actually helping them accelerate their plans. Would they do it anyway? Those are the questions that we ask, and those are the questions that Nigel Parkinson at the panel will table to us. So there's always that challenge, both internally and as we go through the more formal sort of approval processes to, well, actually, are we getting the jobs? Would we get those jobs anyway? Would a lesser grant still result in the outcomes that we're after? Those are the challenges we get all the time. So it is something, as I say, we're challenged internally and externally.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Steve's going to jump in, but I actually call on our CPCA colleagues, because I know for every service line, and it is something I know Fliss does incredibly well, what have you done to achieve this outcome? And the CapEx grants is the example as well. Nigel's on the line, he asked a question, and Nitin from the business board as well, would this not happen without the intervention for the CapEx grant? And the answer is yes, we don't invest. So, but Steve and Martin, did you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, I mean, you've said pretty much everything that I would have said, other than if we get approval on Thursday for Agrimec, then we will actually be creating 20 jobs for 100k at Agrimec. They don't know where else to build their manufacturing to double their business at the moment. That's why they bought a farm several years ago, and if we don't help them, they'll have to wait, and that's business that will go elsewhere. They've got a massive order book, 6 million or something like that. They export to Europe and USA, and we are instrumental. We being the CPCA and its agents, and we are instrumental in bringing that business forward. And most businesses see the value of bringing business forward rather than delaying it. So they are incremental jobs. Yes, you could contend that they'll do it anyway. Well, many of these businesses can't get the bank loans they need, so all the loans from other places, so they hunt for money. We actually push the button with them much earlier than otherwise.
Steve, you want to come in there?
Yeah, just a slightly different point. Obviously there are requirements to evaluate everything we do. So we are just commissioning an independent evaluation of all of the GrowthWorks programme, which will look at this whole question around additionality. So that will be further information we'll be able to share back to all local authority stakeholder colleagues at some point. But many of the funding streams that go in to make up the whole package, so for example, ERDF and ESF, they all have requirements around producing what's called a summative assessment. So this is an evaluation that goes into the evidence to say, did it deliver what it was supposed to deliver, and are they legitimately counted and wouldn't have happened anyway? So we will have lots of this type of information starting to flow from the programme as those particular parts finish their delivery period during later this year.
Councillor Bowes.
Okay, thank you for those responses. I guess one thing I'm getting a sense of here is that with the service you're providing, it's been going, what, two years now? You've got potential for another 2 years. It sounds like you're just starting to build up the head of steam to get the jobs created. So I guess the question, and this is probably more directed to the CPCA, is, is this the contract, the service for a couple of years actually long enough? We'd be looking more longer term, maybe up to a decade, to actually make sure we get that momentum and speed. Because the trouble is, if this service is then stopped, say in next year or a year's time or 2 years time, and we have to get someone else in, we're starting from scratch almost again, aren't we? So it's an observation that, if we're going to really leverage what's being done here, then we need to be looking longer term.
I think that's a good point, mate. Thank you. I will bring it to a close now. Thanks again to our Growth Works team and also CPCA officers. And I think it's been a very lively discussion. There's a lot of work to be done, obviously, and hopefully we can all combine and make sure that we make Fenland a success. So thank you all for your time today. I will call a 5-minute comfort break before our next item.
Thank all
you.
of you as well. We
Thank
appreciate
you very much.
the scrutiny and the questioning. It's always good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you from Oxfordshire.
Thank you, everybody. We will proceed with item number 7 on the agenda, which is progress in delivering the economy corporate objectives to include planning on the pack of pages 33 to 66. And I welcome, well, Nick Harding is still here, and Simon Jackson. Would you like to make a presentation to start with, or do you want to go straight into a question and answer?
Well, I'm happy to members have had a chance to have a look at the report, Chair. Sorry. Members have had a chance to look at the report, Chair, so I'm more than happy to go into questions and answers. Well, at least questions, hopefully some answers.
Yeah.
Nick, are you happy to do that?
I thought he was going to do a runner.
Yeah.
I was about to ask the same question.
There are no specific points you want to bring up then in terms of an overview, no?
Not specifically. I mean, I think that the point was being raised about almost this kind of so what, where's the value added is always an important one, and we're extremely mindful of that. And of course, as per our GrowthWorks and county council colleagues, in terms of economic growth, that comes through businesses. So it's a question of how do we support those businesses? How do we work with them? Are there things that we can do in terms of some of the infrastructure to help them? And clearly, as has been pointed out, one of the key issues that we face is the other shortages of land, service land available, indeed premises that are available, and that is a key blockage. And as Anna pointed out, that's a really important project, working with colleagues from planning and other departments that we're seeking to tackle now. Because once we've got that starting to resolve that, then we will see substantial growth, more growth within Fenland, because Fenland isn't short of demand, it isn't short of inquiries, and we put substantial effort. And my colleague Anne Wardle, who is on business engagement as we speak with the newly formed Chamber of Commerce in Fenland, so that's where she is right now. We put a lot of effort in going out and speaking with and indeed taking Councillor Benny as well with us on these occasions. A lot of time and effort goes into working with local businesses and those that businesses want to expand, and then trying to find them somewhere within Fenland that they can actually grow their business at. So a lot of effort goes into that, and that's really where most of the growth will come from. Yes, there will be inward investment projects, as we've already heard from GrowthWorks, but that's quite a difficult game, actually. Who is looking to relocate, who is looking to expand into the UK and then into Cambridgeshire and possibly into Fenland? It's a much more efficient exercise to work with the businesses who are here, because basically you know where they are, and you can get a foot in that door. So that's what we do, and we put a lot of time and effort into that. And in terms of the kind of so what, again, very similar response to GrowthWorks colleagues, in that we ask for, we get feedback from businesses to say, without your intervention, I actually wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have done it, as the councillor made the point, I wouldn't have done it until next year had you not come along and helped us with this. And of course, there is a lot of grant money that's available, and we make sure that we maximise that for businesses within Fenland. And indeed, actually, just to answer the kind of point about GrowthWorks, part of my role in particular, and Anne and Anna, can't miss Anna off, apologies Anna, is to make sure that Fenland gets its fair share, or more than its fair share, of what is available. The fact of the matter is that the county put a lot of money, the combined authority put a lot of money into the GrowthWorks contract to have this service available. Part of our job is to make sure we maximise that for Fenland, and we work hard at that. So, whether you think it adds value or not, it's there. And we know that from speaking to businesses who perhaps are looking to expand and maybe even looking to move to other areas, one of the things they come back to is oh, I get grant money from Lincolnshire, or I get grant money from Peterborough, or they've got a service that will help me with this or that or the other. So we know it does matter to businesses. And so part of our role is to absolutely make sure that we get the most out of what is available, because it's there. And perhaps historically, dare I say, before the ED team was perhaps formed, that we maybe didn't get as much out of that opportunity, as certainly we do now, and certainly as we will continue to do going forward. So sorry, I'll stop there, Chair.
Fine, thank you very much, thank you. I'll open it up to members for comments, question. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you. You heard in the previous presentations we had from GrowthWorks, they're holding business events in Huntingdon and Peterborough. My question is, why not Whittlesea? Why not Fenland? You've got 4 market towns that are jumping for wanting businesses there. So what about holding some in the area?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, thank you. It's a good question. We are actually, as I think GrowthWorks colleagues alluded to, we are actually in conversation with them about holding one of their events in Fenland, and indeed my colleague Anne Wardle, I think, has got at least 2 other events from different routes other than GrowthWorks that are going to come into the district. We already put one together, which was a successful event focusing on employment and skills, which we held in Wisbech. The biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues, certainly that we find when we're speaking with businesses on a one-to-one basis, and we have a rolling around 30 to 40 businesses that we have a one-to-one relationship with. One of the key issues that they come back to us about is skills, lack of skills, but also, frankly, the lack of being able to get anybody through the front door, whether they've got the skills or not. And so one of the things that, and so we spend a lot of time, and Anne focuses very much, as you heard earlier, with the skills service as part of GrowthWorks, and indeed other agencies such as the Department of Work and Pensions, the colleges, the newly created college at Chatteris, and so on. So we put a lot of effort into that, and so we held an event with all of those people, invited businesses to come to, which we held at in Wisbech, which again was very successful, very practical in terms of, you know, how can you help us to get people through the front door, whether they've got the skills or not, hopefully with the skills. And we had a number of businesses who came to that event. So we are seeking to do more of that type of thing, and indeed through the chamber meeting that's being held it's at 4 o'clock, a little bit later today. There's a new chair that's now in place in the Chamber of Commerce for the Committee for Fenland, who's a very proactive, very positive gentleman. He lives in the district, his business is actually in Ely, but it's more about the person. He's very proactive, and he wants to work with us in terms of more engagement, more events, etc. So there will be, you'll probably say to me next year, why we had 20 events this year, you know. So I'm not saying 20, by the way, I threw that, it may be 12, but there will be, in terms of events, that there will be more of those, and quite often, I mean, again, you do have to be a little bit careful, because some of these events, I attended one with Councillor Benioni last week. So some of these events, you know, that you've got to be really focused, and they've got to have a real sort of outcome, an objective to them, rather than just holding them for holding them's sake. And so we're very mindful of that, but there will be more of them.
On that line, with the, and we've still seen proposed science park in by Kingsdyke, by Rutledge Causeway, that is obviously going to be projected forward, and there will be hopefully quite a few employers coming onto that site. So therefore, it's very important that you engage now with the companies that are possibly going to come forward to occupy premises on that science park.
Yeah, yes, on that, we've been engaged for a significant amount of time now. We're both the owner of the Whittlesea site, and indeed more often than not his agent, Stephen Bryce. They have, as you're probably aware, submitted into the following the call for site, so they've submitted their application to be within the local plan. Under 2 of the policies, I can't remember the numbers of them, but 2 of the policies. But also they will be submitting this year an application for the Victory work site, and we've already had discussions with both Nick and the county council. So, and you may also be aware that Mace Technology have now got permission there, and we've been in, and Anne Wardle in particular has been working with Mace now for seems forever, but probably a year or more to land, make sure they land in onto that site. But it is an exciting opportunity. We will introduce them. I was involved with science parks. In fact, the last authority I worked at, we persuaded them to invest £45 million in buying half of a science park. So we know a little bit about science parks. And so we are going to bring more. We're going to bring somebody in that will advise them. The question is, you know, is that the right location for a science park? That's an issue. But I know Stephen Bryce, the agent, has really worked hard and has looked closely into that. And it may be, it may not be. But I think we need to get to that point quickly, because, as I say, there is demand. We could have had businesses subject to planning located on there now, had it not been for their wish to pursue a science park facility there. So whichever happens, and it comes back to the development prospectus that Anna pointed out earlier, that there is no doubt that the Whittlesey Park will be one of those sites that we focus even more on in terms of what needs to be done to bring it forward.
Yeah, on that line, you're actually talking to 3 Whittlesey councillors who've been briefed on it by Mr. Rice, and we know quite a bit about it and we're all for it.
Yeah, what I'm not clear about now is with the science park in particular, there's been pre-planning advice, presumably. There's no timescale for a planning application at the moment. With Mace, it's slightly different, isn't it?
So as I understand it, the latest I had, which is probably only a couple of weeks ago, from Stephen Bryce, is that they would be submitting an application for the area that they refer to as Victory Works, which doesn't include the, I'm going to call it a pond, but pit, yeah, and which doesn't include that, but it's the kind of area that's around. So they are going to be coming forward with, as I understand it, with a planning application this year.
Councillor Wicks, thank you.
On a similar vein, we're talking about the development of Science Park, the regeneration of an old pit. Some years ago, we had a presentation from a developer regarding the land which would become available for potential development once the bridge at Kingsdyke was built. Has any approach been made to that prospective developer now the bridge is open?
Nick might also come in on this. So we had a, if this is the piece of land that you're referring to, it might be. We had a meeting recently with a landowner that owns parcel of land. If it's not the same one, it's very near to. Okay. So in which case then I might stop, but also just to tell you that we have been in conversations with Chiltern Transport, what I'm talking about is the land opposite Chiltern Transport. Is that not the same thing?
Churchfield Farm is the site for light industrial development, I believe.
Yeah. So it might be then, because the gentleman we also met with the owner of that land, and they were initially or previously been talking about developing it for light industrial, which we would have said yes, please, thank you very much. But what the argument he was making was that, and you know, who knows how long this will last for, but the cost of building those light industrial units just weren't making commercial sense to then let them out. Hence why he'd had this conversation with Brian Sagasta, who's the MD of Chiltern Transport, and they need to expand, and so hence why they were having that conversation, because the owner wasn't commercially at this time anyway, and for the foreseeable, commercially viable for them to build units because of the cost of materials, etc. So that might be the same piece. Forgive me if it isn't.
I don't believe it is. I'm talking about land to the south of the road that has been built at Kingsdyke on the Peterborough side.
Through you, Chairman, I'm not aware of any approaches, and I can't recall anything being submitted to us as part of the emerging local plan call for sites. But I'd have to double check, Chair.
Yeah, councillor Say.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, I've got bad throat at the moment. One of the things I've been hearing from businesses, they are against expanding because of lack of good transport infrastructure within Fenland. To name but two, the A47 dualling that we've long been talking about and seems no further forward. But also we've also got the March to Wisbech railway line, which would enable people to get about to get to jobs. You know, those are two things that I think seriously need looking at.
In respect of the A47, I completely agree, and we need to keep the momentum up in trying to get the ear of government to get that road improved, because I think that from a personal point of view, I think it would make a real difference to the economic future of the area, without a doubt. And in terms of, say, for example, the Wisbech access study, junctions, which aren't yet funded, I know that whenever there is a transportation meeting with the CPCA and the like, staff do push for consideration of those for funding.
Councillor Wicks.
Along with those two aspects of infrastructure, let's not forget Ely North Junction and the impact that could have on development in Fenland.
Coming back to the A47 dualling, I mean, obviously there's been a business case for it. I think land has been acquired any time now, isn't it, to finalise this stretch. There is an opinion that until the A47 is developed beyond King's Lynn, there may not be much mileage in the economy of this area. I don't know whether you want to comment on that or not.
Well, it certainly doesn't at the moment. It certainly doesn't stop there being significant number of inquiries that we're receiving for both from businesses, mostly from businesses that are here, but also businesses outside Fenland who are considering, who are looking at moving into Fenland. The biggest block that we're currently seeing, when we go back to the land availability, service land availability, etc. Yes, there are issues around transportation. I mean, there are in a lot of places, but you can look at, it's absolutely the case, and you can look at areas. I was involved in a Bedfordshire growth company, and we worked hard and achieved the upgrading of the dualling of the I'm going to forget now, 23 or 421, whatever it is that runs at the south of Bedford. And if you look at that now, thank you, and that was a significant block on development. But if you look at now in terms of what's happened, there's tremendous amount of development. And so, it is maybe a fairly obvious point, but if you have got, better access and transport access, then, it's absolutely going to help. Up to press, I've certainly not heard of it being a kind of major block. I think some people get used to things, don't they, to a certain extent. But if it were dual, it would certainly be a significant boost. Of that, I think there is no doubt.
I think the point I was making was the dualling is on a comparatively short bit of land, really, till we get the other side of King's Lynn. But Councillor Benny, you want to come in?
Yeah, good, Chairman. Thank you. And there's a lot of talk of the A47, but I bring something which you Whittlesea councillors will be very pleased to have brought up, the relief road at Whittlesea. I think that would be another major boost to the area. That would allow access through and into Fenland from Peterborough, and the transport links there. It would open up the industrial land at Whittlesea, because at the moment all the vehicles have to come through the village or through the town, And it makes access to the industrial areas hard. It would open that up. That would be a good thing. And something that doesn't get mentioned very often, but I do keep bringing it up whenever I can, and it was on the drawing board at one point, was a link road from sort of off the Warboys Road at Chatteris that runs to the M11. I mean, that was another thing that was on the cards at one time. If we're looking at infrastructure, that would certainly put the south of the district, give it much better access to a main motorway, which is something, we're 20 miles away from it wherever we go, really, from Chatteris in the south. And there was talk of that at one point. I think that's been shelved, but that would be another piece of infrastructure which would bring an arterial route through into Fenland, which I feel would be certainly beneficial to the area. And as we get economic corridors that follow these, that would be good for the whole district.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Any more comments? No. I think you're getting away lightly today.
I think it's because we're doing such a good job, Chair. I think that's what I would.
You've got to blow your hands up,
Chair. Yes, if I may, through you, Chair.
No, thank you very much for that comment. Yeah, Councillor Benny.
Yeah. It's the first time I've actually spoken at ONS, and when I first came here, like 5 years ago, but 4 years ago when I was given the portfolio job of economic growth, when I first came here, we didn't have an economic growth team. We had Justin, and as much as I like Justin, and I worked very well with Justin, poor chap, he was overworked. I've said this many times, and I was very surprised when we first came here. We didn't even have a list of businesses that were in Fenland. We've had Simon come on with Anne, 2 different roles, 2 different people, and as they're my officers, and I'm proud to work with them. They work well together. Anna heads the team as well. And since Anna's taken over, we have moved, the economic growth team has moved leaps and bounds. Probably there wasn't anything, and we pulled this together. The team has worked well. We've now got Sherry, who's part of my Fenland team, but does a lot of the admin work of keeping the business database up to date, and keeps the website up to date as well. So the team has grown, and we've had 4 years to pull this together since the last election. And we spent 2 years of that. The economic growth team really did all the business grants during that time. So this has happened in 2 years. And to see where it's come from when I first came here and what was here, which in real terms that there was, but it wasn't working. And I really feel that the whole team, Simon and Hannah, and Sherry as a new member, have really pulled this together. And I think this is the foundation for, good growth. And I think this will work very, very well in the future. If I'm elected back here, I would be very pleased to carry on working with these people. It's just like to say thank you very much to the team for what they've done and the support. We have bi-weekly meetings. Also Mark Greenwood, who's come on in the assets team. I have meetings with him regularly, keep me abreast of what's going on in Fenland. And I'd just like to say thank you to my officers. If I'm not re-elected, I shan't see you anymore. So publicly, I would like to thank you all for what you've done in the last 4 years.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is one occasion when the councillor, the portfolio holder, and the officers can blow their own trumpet. Well done.
Was that it?
Yeah, that was it. Blowing their own trumpet, and they're perfectly entitled to do so.
Yeah, I think that's quite right. And there has been a lot of progress in the last 4 years. I think, as was flogged to death in the earlier item, the key to all this is making sure that Fenland receives its fair share of funding from CPC, from central government, etc. That's the key to it. Investment in Fenland is vital. And if we're going to move forward, we need that investment. But yeah, well done. Thank you very much for that. We have the report in front of us, which is duly noted. And thank you for your time today.
Okay. Excuse me,
Before
Chairman.
you go,
Excuse me,
there's always
Chairman.
one.
On page 9 of the report, it says the Whittlesea Heritage Visitor Centre cancelled. That is an incorrect one, and I believe the leader was going to get it corrected, but it's still on this report as cancelled. So can we get that altered?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I did mention this at full council, and I think for the record, it should also be mentioned and put in the minutes of this meeting as well, that that was an error, that the Whittlesea Heritage Centre project is suspended. And by suspended, I don't mean nothing is happening, very far from it. We, as Chairman, you're aware, we are actively looking at potential alternative site, or a potential alternative site to the one which had previously been mentioned. And we are also discussing the potential for additional funding from third-party sources. So it's much more appropriate to use the word suspended to describe the project than that it has been cancelled.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's just to clarify locally that some people believe it is cancelled. It's not. It's actually suspended. Thank you for that. Thank you. Right, we have the report in front of us. If you'd like to make any comments on the report before we go into question and answer. Thank you, Steve.
I don't plan to read the whole report out, Chairman, but I think everyone recognises it's been a very busy few years in regards to the transformation and communication at the council. Communication, of course, runs all the way through the council, through all departments, as well as all the communication that we do with the public. And transformation has taken many forms, which we've seen with projects brought forwards by different portfolio leaders, as well as the My Fenland project brought forwards with communication. So hopefully you'll have some questions, and if there's anything I can clarify, happy to try and do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Hay. Thank you.
Yes, on page 5 of the report, it mentions that press releases are shared through following channels, 2 of which are the Fens magazine, which is Whittlesea and Wisbech editions. What I'd like to know is, why is it not shared with Centrepoint, which is a quarterly magazine that comes out in Chatteris?
I think the list of magazines that we work with is always growing. We're ready to add new ones, and if that's a suggestion, I think officers will certainly take it on board. It's, you know, the more ways that we can communicate, the better. So thank you for that. We'll add that one, shall we? Thank you.
If you like, I'll forward on the person you need to contact.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
A comment I'd like to make generally, it concerns the neighbourhood plan, which of course we had passed in Whittlesea last week, and to great delight of Councillor Laws, just walked in here now. You can sit there if you wish, it's up to you. The only comment I'd make on that is that an awful lot of work went into this for 5 years, and at the beginning there was quite a degree of public consultation, and ideas were brought forward from the public into what was going to happen with the neighbourhood plan, and the draft of it was a very, very worthwhile document. Would it have been possibly more beneficial right at the end, before we went to the polling station, to have another public consultation just to outline what the final draft was. Because I had a lot of people in Whittlesea, I'm sure the other councils will bear me out on this, that didn't understand what the neighbourhood plan was in its final form. And they found it very difficult to access the information. We did provide copies of the neighbourhood plan draft at the local library and also at the council offices. And I did personally, and I know others did, we supply a lot of information online. But it's just a thought, maybe for future benefit, maybe a consultation at the end of the process before we go to the final poll might be beneficial. Perhaps Councillor Lord, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you. Don't disagree, because obviously COVID and the fact that we had to physically go around to areas and map the green spaces prevented us doing that. So obviously we were 2 years in abeyance with that. I don't disagree with what you're saying. And yes, I think there was confusion because, dare I say, the library in Whittlesea directed people to read Fenland local plan instead of a neighbourhood plan, which added confusion, especially when one lady had told me she spent all day in the library reading it. Then obviously, which didn't help. I obviously, like you, Councillor Mason, had several people approach me because they didn't understand what a neighbourhood plan would deliver. Also the fact, as you say, I think we had promoted it quite well. Comms here had put it on social media sites. As you say, it was in the town council, it was in the library. We'd also published it on our own town council website as well. We'd also put public notices out where people could find that information. As one gentleman said to me, we didn't publicise it enough. What I would say is, unfortunately, the two local magazines that are freebies through the doorways, which is Whittlesea, Discovery Whittlesea and Fensmag, the comms here missed the publication date. No fault of their own, it changed because it was obviously between Christmas and starting of the new year. I think that was one of the downfalls. I think if it had been published, the article that I'd written in there, I don't think we would have had as many inquiries. Obviously, with the neighbourhood plan, it wouldn't be down to Fenland to actually hold the last consultation or viewing. It would be down to the parish or the town council, not down to Fenland District Council. So I think there is something to be learned from that. And I think if we know at the moment, I think it's Wimbledon that are pursuing a neighbourhood plan at the moment. Maybe that's a suggestion that we ought to put forward before it goes to referendum, that they actually hold that consultation and viewing period. But it's like so many things, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, can you? I think we did the best we could.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's quite important to understand the responsibilities of different councils here, because this is obviously overview and scrutiny for Fenland District Council, but the neighbourhood plan is something that was brought forward by the town council. And so we can't be involved here with the consultation of any kind. That's for the town council to do. As a partner, it's important that we help promote, and we did, of course, we put it on the website and did everything we could within our power. So in defence of our team, I don't think anyone's done anything wrong. And if there are any things to be learned, then perhaps direct them to the town council. Thank you.
Yeah, I just felt a lack of understanding by some of the public led to people either not voting or they in fact voted against it. Fortunately, it didn't make a difference to the result. But
If I can come back on that, social media is a very good way of getting information out, but it's also a dangerous way because a lot of the postings on there by two individuals, completely inaccurate, encourage people to vote no because they seem to be under the impression that we were going the same direction as Oxford City Council on one of their parishes, which is this 15-minute barrier. And of course, that was nothing to do with Whittlesea's neighbourhood plan, and it won't be for Wimbledon either. As I say, social media, excellent in many ways, but it does lend itself to, shall we say, a trail of postings that are inaccurate.
yeah, Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I totally agree. The misinformation that was on it, and as you know, I don't do it, but I get it read to me, was quite damning. And it was, well, scurrilous in its nth degree. But going forward, and Councillor Tierney's quite right, the town's neighbourhood plan is different from Fenland district plan. The district plan needs to be explained to the public. And I know it is certainly explained in a certain way, but as we get nearer to the approval of the district plan, I think we need to up our game slightly and stop the misinformation via the social media sites that is going to take place. We all know it's going to take place, but I think we need to up our game so that the misinformation is quashed before it ever gets a hold. Do you agree?
Yeah, Councillor Laws, I think, and then Councillor Tierney.
If I can just add one thing, social media, yes. I mean, you know, to get the information out there accurately, which in fairness to the Fenland's com did a brilliant job. No coming away from that. And it is the town council's responsibility or a parish. What I would say is that we also need to educate the libraries, the staff in there. I'm sorry to say that, but they obviously were very confused if it was a local plan, a neighbourhood plan, if it was Fenland, if it was town. So I think not just to put paperwork in there for obviously members of the public to view, but also just to have maybe a running sheet or just a little briefing to say, yeah, so they get an understanding of it. I think super lessons to be learned here in many ways. Thank you.
Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, officers have just told me that the item in particular was moved to the front page of the website as requested, so try to make it as visible as possible. I think Councillor Miskander makes a great point about explaining things clearly, and one of the things I'm passionate about in my portfolio is making things as plain English as we can, getting rid of the jargon, and officers will tell you I'm always banging on about it. But if you spot something that I've missed, or that you, because what one person thinks is clear, another won't. So I welcome overview and scrutiny's input. If any of you see something when you're reading any of our official documents or the draft versions that you think could be worded better, just tell me, and I'll feed it back. Thank you.
Okay. Come back on that, Councillor Tierney. That could be extended to all councillors and officers obviously see things, but if any of the councillors or the current crop of councillors, if they spot something, they should tell you, and that could be sent in an email. If you spot something, tell us and we'll get it corrected. I think that's a good way forward.
Yeah, Councillor Wicks, thank you.
On the matter we're talking about here, our neighbourhood plan, I did field a number of questions at a community group, and yes, maybe I explained it in a different way to what the general thing was, but after the conversation, it became clear to most people the significance of the neighbourhood plan as opposed to the local plan. And it was also highlighted where the last local plan fell down and why it's in a rewrite as we speak. So, you know, word of mouth is a powerful tool in anything like this, and we should all be engaging on the benefit for our areas.
I've said it before, but I'm very impressed in the last few years how the online transformation is taking place and how it is simplified. I think communication is the word, isn't it? So congratulations, Councillor Tierney and others who've worked on that. It certainly is easier to follow. I think the public can find their way through the various things a lot easier than they used to. So well done with all that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just on a couple of other points, if someone really wants to look at some gobbledygook that the council can produce, look at the validation document for county council. I don't know if you want to have insomnia, but it is the worst document I've ever read. And the responses will be in that vein. And I applaud Fenland District Council, Emma Nestor. A thank you to her, because the validation document that we produced, simple English, we all understand it and we know where it's going. And I think the other thing I would just like to say, I don't know if people are aware or members are aware, but having gained the yes vote on Thursday, the actual document becomes valid from 9 o'clock on Friday morning with the planning department. That it will go to full council in May, but it will now be taken into consideration for any new applications coming in, which is something I didn't know. I thought we had to wait for ratification in May. So that document is current, and shall I say it's more current than the Fenland local plan. So I hope it comes into effect. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure Councillor Scanlon would like to come in there.
That's great. And I can concur with what Councillor Laws has said about the validation document. If you want something to send you to sleep, please read it or attempt to read it. It is the most concocted gobbledygook document that I have ever read. And I think Cambridge County Council should be ashamed of themselves for producing such a document. I hope any document produced from Fenland is a lot simpler and better to read than that one was.
Any further comments? Well, thank you all for your time today. And the report on the transformation communication progress is duly noted. Thank you. Item 9 on the agenda is the future work programme, which you have before you on page 87 to 90. I think we're all aware there will be elections in May, so the formation of this particular panel will no doubt change considerably. But nevertheless, the work programme will remain the same. And as you'll see before you, we do have quite a heavy programme in June. Freedom and Leisure Review will be very interesting, along with the Community Safety Partnership. So I would say good luck to all those people that are sitting in this chair and others come June. And that will be a very interesting time. Councillor Wicks.
Regarding the future work programme, I think it's important in the absence of a should we say, report by the county mayor that we should pursue his attendance at this forum sooner rather than later in the year.
I thoroughly agree with that comment, and it is on our ongoing actions, of course, as you saw earlier, and that will be brought forward as soon as possible in the new municipal year. Thank you. Councillor Scanlon.
Got October has got Anglian Water. I would actually like to see them moved up the thing if it's possible, bearing in mind the number of leaks that we've had on the A605 through Coates. I think it's now registering 8 major leaks. What are they doing about it? It's absolutely disgraceful, the amount of work that they've had to carry out in Coates. And they're digging up one hole 5 yards from the next hole. It's just ongoing, and I think they need to get their act together and find out what's actually happening within the villages, because it's terrible.
I think our comment that probably bringing it forward to June might be a bit ambitious, but there is leeway in September rather than October.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
helps.
yeah. I would agree with that. Even a month forward, it's got to be better than what it's been at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Wicks.
I totally concur with what's going on. Anglian Water throughout the area have got a lot to answer to on a number of fronts, but particularly in the villages, and the impact they've had on life in the villages has been quite considerable. I thought we'd dealt with all the problems with the rectification to the pump that we have in the village, but I'm afraid I was wrong with that assumption.
We all know they're not a statutory body and don't have to come, but they were cooperative and came last time and spoke to us. But in the villages, and not just Coates, other villages have experienced the same time, and I think they need to have a future works programme to replace some of these pipelines because they're obviously not up or fit for purpose.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
There is a point on this on a members seminar that we had with Anglian Water. Exactly the point I brought up about the age of their infrastructure and the replacement plan was raised. So it is an ongoing issue that we can go back to from, you know, our history with Anglian Water and ask the very searching questions of what they done since we first asked the question.
Okay, well, that will be considered as probably a forward item, maybe in September. Thank you. We come to item 10, items which the chairman has under item 3 deemed to be urgent, and there were none. So I will officially close this meeting at 16:05 with thanks for all who attended. Thank you.